Good afternoon. I would like to welcome everyone to today's program. This University of Illinois Extension Local Government Information and Education Network webinar will address legislative issues affecting counties in Illinois. This is being provided by the Illinois Association of County Board Members and the National Association of Counties. This demonstrates the core mission of the University of Illinois to bring research from the land-grant college to the citizens of Illinois. The University of Illinois Extension would like to thank Kelly Murray for helping us with today's program. She serves as the Executive Director for the Illinois Association of County Board Members, and she has been a very big help in putting together today's program. With that, we'll move into today's speaker. Taylor Anderson is a registered lobbyist with the Illinois Association of County Board Members. He has served in various capacities within government, including serving in agencies as the Illinois Secretary of State's office, with the Illinois Senate President Emil Jones' Revenue Committee, and then as a Dunn Fellow under the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. Before coming to the association, Taylor worked at the Illinois Chamber of Commerce in the Government Affairs Division, where he analyzed voter precincts and researched the Chamber's position on papers within the given work of the Chamber. Today, he serves as a lobbyist in legislative affairs for the Illinois Association of County Board Members, and we'd like to welcome him here today, and we'll hand the floor over to Taylor.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a Thursday during what I'm probably imagining is your lunch hour. We'll try to move through these slides fairly quickly so we have enough time at the end for questions, if there are any, and get you all out of here by 1 o'clock. As everyone's probably aware, we are still without a budget in the state of Illinois. That's not going to change this month, as the Senate and House aren't scheduled to return to Springfield until January 27th. There were some days scheduled for earlier in January. However, the House canceled the 2 days that they were supposed to be in, and the Senate reduced the number of days that they were going to be in from 3 down to 1. So the next time that they will convene will be January 27th, and that also is coincidentally the day that the governor set to give the State of the State address. So as I said, the governor's State of the State address is going to be on the 27th. These are just some deadlines and some key dates to keep in mind as we move forward through the spring session. Probably the most interesting day that I think a lot of people are looking forward to will be February 17th, which will be the governor's budget address. However, if you notice, there's early deadlines for both the introduction of House bills and the introduction of Senate bills. This usually limits the amount of bills that are introduced in a given year, February 11th for the House, February 19th for the Senate, which will probably be a good thing considering that we're still without a budget. So hopefully both the House and the Senate and legislators in both chambers can focus mainly on passing or crafting a budget both for our current fiscal year and for the upcoming fiscal year 2017. Another key date on there is April 27th or 22nd, and that will be the final day for third reading of passage of House bills and Senate bills from their original their chamber of origin. So again, this year we see some of the dates much earlier in the calendar than normal, and again, I think that is partly to help the legislature focus on the elephant in the room, which obviously is crafting a budget. The important day here, obviously, is that May 31st adjournment date. That's typically the day that the Senate and House will adjourn. We saw, obviously, this past year that we flew by that adjournment date with no budget. Therefore, the House and Senate both had continual sessions throughout the summer and into early and late fall, and even into December. So we'll see where we are May 31st. That's usually going to be the ball game as far as convening session days. Obviously, the caveat there is whether or not we have a budget for either fiscal year 16 or fiscal year 17. We'll delve into some specific legislation that moved through the General Assembly this year affecting counties, this past year affecting counties. House Bill 261 deals with electronic postings. Now, this issue of transparency has cropped up time and time again in the General Assembly. We saw over 35 bills dealing with transparency in some form or fashion, either through FOIA, through electronic postings, through Open Meetings Act, Local Records Act, et cetera, et cetera. This bill was one of those positive bills, I think, for counties and units of local government, which gives them some flexibility, especially some cost flexibility. We all know that publishing in newspapers, our required postings in newspapers is quite expensive. It continues to seem to rise, and that sometimes prohibits units of local government, especially counties, the smaller counties, from being able to build their websites because they're spending money posting in newspapers, and we know that the readers in newspapers continues to decline, and more people are getting their information via the internet. So a bill like this, which would be designed to allow the unit of government to decide to, instead of publishing in the newspaper, they would publish on their official website instead. Again, this would free up, in our belief, some dollars for counties to build the necessary infrastructure and maybe divert the necessary resources over to having a fully functional website instead of putting that money to pay for publishing in newspapers when we know that the readership is declining on that front. So again, this was just one of many bills we saw this year dealing with transparency. We'll speak more about transparency a little later as we get down to some of the initiatives and proposals from the Illinois Association of County Board Members. House Bill 229, another big, before I get started on that, another big issue this year obviously was local government consolidation. We saw the governor, through the Lieutenant Governor's office, create a task force to look at this issue. That task force released a report earlier this month, and one of the key provisions or key points that they pointed to was dealing with making or giving counties the ability to become more efficient in how their local governments within the county function and operate. DuPage County in 2013 received kind of a pilot program, if you will, powers to look at how they would merge and consolidate local governments within DuPage County. And so this bill was aimed at trying to expand that pilot program to McHenry County and to Lake County. They both wanted to try their hands with this pilot program. We've seen some of the success DuPage County has had, although there has been some obstacles in DuPage with regards to having to wait for specific thresholds for consolidation to take place, such as if it's an elected office, the term limit running out on that office, and et cetera. So don't know if we'll see something like this again this year, just applying to 2 counties. I think if we do see a bill, it will likely include all 102 counties. Whether or not that passes, we'll see. But I think it's a step in the right direction to have the county be the one to look at consolidation rather than the state try to do it in a top-down fashion. I think that would create a lot of headaches, and obviously having the county, who has a really good sense of what's going on within the county, be the one to kind of handle consolidation, I think is the proper route. This is dealing with the juror fee bill. House Bill 2641 I'm sure all of you are quite familiar with what happened, excuse me, 2 veto sessions ago when a bill was introduced and quickly passed both chambers, which increased the fee paid to jurors quite substantially. This bill was an attempt by various county organizations, along with the trial lawyers who passed the original piece of legislation and the original sponsor, Senator Morrow, to try to make some adjustments to that fee schedule, considering the number of concerns that county officials raised. Unfortunately, we were able, or I should say, fortunately, we were able to come to an agreed bill. We worked very hard with the proponents of the original bill and the sponsor to come to an agreed bill, and I think it's a common sense bill that, although it did increase the fees over what they would have been before the original bill passed, this was a significant reduction from that bill that passed 2 veto sessions ago. However, even though we were able to manage to get that bill out of the Senate, it was held in the House, and so I know that original Public Act went into effect in June 1st, and so we're going to try this year to move either another bill, a similar bill to this, or try to resurrect House Bill 2641. So please keep in mind that this has been, we're trying to work on this issue. We know it's going to drastically affect numerous counties' budgets as they move forward and they have trials, and especially trials that go on for longer than just one day. That $50 a day to each jury, we know is going to be quite painful to certain counties. And so we are trying to work to address this issue. We're cautiously optimistic that we might have a chance to pass this bill or something very similar to it this spring. This is kind of old news, but it's still kind of maybe the silver lining from 2015 without having a budget. As you're all aware of, without that budget and the authorization that it gave to certain agencies, those agencies were not distributing the dollars that they should have down to units of local government. That includes motor fuel tax, E911 money, sales tax, along with video gaming and some other funds. So we are very happy to see that in December, Senate Bill 2039 was amended in the House and passed both House and Senate, and then signed on the governor on December 7th. You all should be receiving your E911 dollars, your MFT dollars, your sales tax dollars. Obviously, the lottery, which made national news, was included in this. So again, although we don't have a budget still, it's nice to see that those dollars that were being collected and held in a banking account are now being distributed down to units of local government, and particularly to counties. Senate Bill 2134 deals with automatic voter registration. This is being led by Senator Annie Manar. This would streamline and I likely simplify voter registration. There are similar laws, I believe, in Oregon and one other state, and this would make it so when a voter would or a citizen would renew their driver's license or apply for a new one or update it or change it in any way, maybe to a new address, the Secretary of State's office would then automatically register that voter during that time. There's been a lot of concern in recent months, or in recent years about voter registration and how that's handled. And so Senator Manar has gone ahead and introduced that legislation with a host of other senators as well. So I just wanted to point out that those are just a snapshot of some of the bills that we saw introduced in 2015. Those bills are still alive and active because this is the second year. 2015 was the first year. This is the second year of the 99th General Assembly. So some of those bills, like the juror fee bill I spoke about before, still have an opportunity to move. We're going to try to move those bills forward. As well as the Illinois Association of County Board Members, have proposals, and our member county boards create their own legislative agendas and introduce their own bills. And so these are some of those proposals and some of those initiatives that either members or counties like you all have introduced or want to introduce, are proposals that the association itself has put forward. This is a Peoria County initiative. 2 years ago, I believe it was, municipalities were granted the authority to enter into agreements with the Department of Revenue. These agreements allow that municipality to receive specific sales tax data from within the municipal boundaries. It's quite sensitive data. We had to work very hard back when the municipalities wanted this with the brick and mortar stores and Illinois retail merchants and other business interests, because they were worried about their sensitive sales tax data being given out. And so what we were able to do is work out an agreement with them and the Department of Revenue so municipalities could get this really detailed sales tax information to better help them forecast what types of sales tax revenues they can anticipate, to better help them plan for future projects and economic development, along with a whole host of other things. Well, that's worked out pretty well for municipalities, and so now Peoria County has stepped forward and said, well, we think this is something that we could use and that all counties, in fact, could use, and so we would like to have that same authority as municipalities. Excuse me. We're going to introduce a bill, or Peoria County is going to introduce a bill that the association will support, which will allow counties to enter in those same agreements with the Department of Revenue. Again, it would be on a county by county basis. If a county doesn't want to enter into this agreement, they don't have to. But if they so choose to, then the county can move forward and enter into that agreement with, excuse me, with the Department of Revenue. Again, it's just another tool to try to help counties accurately forecast the amount of sales tax revenue that is occurring within their county and to better plan future projects and to deal with economic development. This is a proposal by Will County. We're still trying to do a little more information about this to see, is this a Will County issue? Is this a Collar County issue? How widespread is this issue to the counties? But certainly this is something the Illinois Association County Board members will support. The proposal here is that tax buyers pay the county a $60 fee to fund the court-ordered interest fund. Because of, I'm assuming, some of the economic downturn, what we saw with the housing market, there are a number of sales in error, and Will County has projected that many counties are actually losing money in this transaction, and so they'd like to see that $60 fee raised to $100. So, again, anytime a fee is no longer covering the cost of the operation, we want to make sure that, that's what it's initially designed to do. And anytime counties are kind of getting underwater because that fee hasn't been raised in a little while, or because of change in, in this case, the number of sales in error, we want to make sure that we kind of correct or right the ship so that counties aren't supplementing these programs, or there's supposed to be a fee that does that job. There has been a number of counties that have brought this to the association's attention, dealing with inmates, access to public records. And there's a Wisconsin FOIA statute that actually restricts inmates in county jail to only material or information that applies directly to them. One of the things that we've noticed or have had to correct over the years with FOIA is that FOIA was drafted perhaps a little too broadly, and there's been a lot of unintended consequences, and because of that, we've had to come back time and time again with little minor fixes to try to limit bad things from happening. In this case, there's horror stories out there that we've heard. County inmates requesting information on the correctional officers and personal information about when they're working, what their salary is, things of that nature. We've also had inmates FOIA to receive pictures of female correctional personnel, things of that nature. So we would really like to tighten this. We're not trying to deny any inmates access to information that they may need about themselves or about their case. We're not trying to impede the judicial process in any manner. We're simply trying to limit the amount of abuse that can be caused by inmates behaving badly with FOIA. This is a proposal by Lake County, or an initiative by Lake County. As you all are probably aware of, the Sheriff's Department maintains what's called as an inmate welfare fund, which is set under the Illinois Administrative Code. This wellness fund is supposed to be used to obviously to take care or provide for the wellness of inmates. However, it's a little unclear what is appropriate for the wellness fund to be used for. For example, we've seen some counties are currently using the welfare fund to provide transportation to take inmates to see a dentist or to see a specialist, and we're not 100% sure if the code as it's currently drafted expressly permits that. And so we just want to make sure that we work with the governor and his agencies to clarify this issue. It doesn't need a bill to be introduced, but this is something that Lake County has kind of come to the forefront and said, we want to make sure that we can do X, Y, and Z with the welfare fund. Again, it's all towards taking care of the inmate and toward their wellness. But times have changed since this, code was adopted. There's a lot more, taking patients for visits and things of that nature to specialists, and so they just want to make sure that they can use the welfare fund for those purposes. Again, all aimed at making sure the inmates are taken care of, but again, it's not expressly permitted under the current administrative code. Other than specific bills, there are obviously two kind of just continuing priorities that the Illinois Association of County Board Members has, one of which is protect LGDF and other state and locally shared revenues. Obviously, LGDF is kind of the big, 5,000-pound gorilla. We want to make sure that, it's not dipped into. It's not, the state doesn't withhold that money and use it for, the state's purposes. LGDF and other shared revenue are vital to maintaining the county's mission, which is providing services and providing governance at the local level to the county. So that's always our priority. It's always something that we worry about. We worry about it especially when the state is in financial straits like it currently is. Every year for probably the past 6-7 years, protecting LGDF has been a major priority for the association. This year, we are projecting to be no different. There's already been either through various newspapers or during press conferences, statements made by the governor and the four leaders saying that LGDF is not off the table. Everything's going to be on the table as far as crafting a budget for FY 2016 and FY 2017. So again, that's a huge priority for us and something we're going to be keyed in on all year to make sure that we can protect LGDF as much as possible. Secondly is the reimbursement of probation costs. In years past, this has been a real big problem for us. I want to say in the last 2 or 3 years, we've received significant help from the Supreme Court when they send their budget to the state, and we've been very lucky that the state has maybe not funded to that exact level, but has been in the ballpark, and so we've seen a lot better on this issue. However, this still remains a huge cost for counties. We know that, and we're here to continue to push for full reimbursement. We probably won't get it this year, but we're here to continue to push that issue because we know how significant of a problem this can be for for counties. So, as I mentioned earlier, the governor, through the lieutenant governor's office, created this task force, and I'm going to try to speed through this real quick. Just want to point out a couple of things. This task force released their final report on December 17th and included 27 recommendations for streamlining government and eliminating state mandates. Some of those things we've already talked about, which was the DuPage County legislation to allow a county to consolidate within its own boundaries. Excuse me. Another one of their 27 points is to allow via referendum citizens to actually dissolve or consolidate units of local government. And one of their other recommendations is to modernize public notice mandates. As I said before, this is one of the association's policy initiatives or policy agendas. We want to see how records and data from governments, we want to see that change and how it's given out or distributed to citizens. We want to see it modernized, and we think there's a way to make it more efficient, to make it easier for constituents to find the information they want to find, and also to reduce the cost for the taxpayers who are ultimately paying for those services or those publications, or those notices to be published. So again, as we talked about, one of the ways we feel that modernization could take place would be to reduce or eliminate or change the number or the amount of information that needs to be published in newspapers. We think streamlining some of the current reports would make a lot of sense as well. The association has partnered with IML, the Illinois Park Districts, the Illinois Townships, the Illinois schools, the libraries, and several municipal groups to look at modernization of transparency. And this deals with not just publication notices, but it also deals with FOIA and the Open Meetings Act, Local Records Act, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at ways in which we can reduce some of the redundancies that we see, such as reporting salaries one way in the report you need to send to the treasurer's office, but then reporting salaries a different way for the report you need to send to the comptroller's office, or the information you have to send to the Secretary of State's office, et cetera, et cetera. All these, and it really was kind of mind-boggling when we first sat down and started looking at all the different reports units of local government are required to send, and because these are just standardized reports that you just send out every year and every quarter, depending on when they need to be sent in. sometimes even we aren't aware of all of the redundancies that can appear. So again, we're trying to streamline this. We're trying to make it easier for this information to be found by the public. And we're also trying to save costs for the unit of local government, so they're not spending, man hours essentially recreating the exact same information, but just in a different way. So that's one of our big initiatives that we're working on this year. As I said, last year there were over 35 bills dealing with transparency in some form or fashion. And a lot of the bills that were introduced were just going to add another layer of redundancy on top of the redundant nature of transparency already. And so what we're trying to do is to show legislators, listen, we already have so much information out there that local governments are required by law to provide. The problem is they're being sent either in an outdated format, or they're going to places where no one's able to find them, or they're not being posted online at state agencies. And so this is a major initiative by a very large coalition spanning the breadth of the state and local governments. And I will stop there. There's a lot of other slides dealing with the task force recommendations. I don't want to go through all of them. I want to leave enough time for questions, and like I said, get you guys out of here by 1. So with that, Chris, I will stop and open it up for questions.
Okay, with that, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to type those in the conversation box. And as those come in, we will ask Taylor, and then just kind of give a chance for everyone to ask any questions that they would like to.
Question. Audio?
Yeah, go ahead.
We weren't able to get hooked on directly, but we have one question in relationship to funding. Are you willing to answer that now or approach that now?
Yes.
Okay. It's in regard to exercises for the nuke plants. There's funding that is due to the counties that have nuclear plants in them that is being held by the state at this time. Is there any information as to the movement of those funds and when they may be made available?
That's a great question. I've got one question for you. Can you tell me what county you're with?
LaSalle County.
LaSalle. Okay, great. I have not heard any information about the nuclear funding and when that might be released. I can't remember which agency those funds are with. It wasn't included in that large bill that I talked about that had MFT dollars and video gaming and E911. So I don't know if the governor's office has kind of forgotten about that fund, and that's why it wasn't asked to be included, or if there's a special reason why. But I have not heard any information about releasing those funds.
Okay. Could you make a note of that and possibly enter it into that particular piece of legislation, if that's still possible?
I will certainly reach out and see, kind of what the issue is, or what the reason why they haven't been released. Ultimately, I think we're all kind of hopeful that the General Assembly and the governor's office will get their act together and pass a budget for FY16. And as soon as a budget is passed and signed into law, that money would flow again. But I certainly will reach in. I'll check into that.
Fine. Thank you. We missed it.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. We have a comment. Taylor, the state's attorney told this particular individual that it's not getting reimbursed for their cost. Where is that held, or why was that held up?
Chris, let me see if I understand the question correctly. Are they talking about funds for the state's attorney's office, or
I
the
believe
state's
so,
attorney's
yes.
salary?
I believe it was the state's attorney's funds that were held by the state.
Are we talking about salary reimbursement, Chris?
I believe so. It was a reimbursement for their costs, so I'm assuming that would be the
Okay.
salary.
Okay. Yeah, this has been an issue. This isn't the first time we've heard of this. I wish I had an explanation about why this is one of the things that's been kind of stopped. The short and sweet is the state doesn't have any money, and we don't have a budget. And so, again, normal things that would be reimbursed, or money that would go to local government, it all has to be authorized, and the authorization is done through the budget process. And so without a budget, there's a whole host of things that just have gotten kind of stopped or slowed down because agencies don't have the authority, essentially, to make that pass-through or that reimbursement. So I'm not quite sure why this was one of them that wasn't included in the budget, or in the bill that I talked about that authorized MFT and sales tax and video gaming again. But this is one of the things that we've heard about before. I know some legislators are aware of this situation. Certainly, the state's attorneys association is aware of this, and I know that they have been working and speaking with legislators to try to deal with that. Whether or not we see a separate bill for this, the reimbursement for them, or for nuclear, I don't know. I will say that once a budget is passed and signed into law, some of these things will just naturally progress because the authorization will be there. But I'm not sure at what level we'd even be looking at for reimbursement for state's attorneys. I talked about probation officers' reimbursement, and I have very low hopes that we're going to see the kind of funding that we've seen the past 2 years, which has been very good. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, is there any other questions that we have? Okay, I guess with that, Taylor, we'd like to thank you on behalf of the University of Illinois Extension for providing today's program. This webinar will be posted on the Local Government Information and Education Network website shortly. And any individual can go in and look at the recording from that point. We look forward to our future presentations, which we have several that are coming up. The next one will be on Thursday, February 18th, and we're going to be looking at the Illinois state budget crisis and the impact on local government. And then we have a series of the third Thursday thereafter within the same structure through the month of May. We hope that you will be able to join us, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Again, Taylor, thank you for presenting today.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, everyone, for joining the call today.